Everyone's favorite genre comedy duo are back in a movie that proves English boarding schools are scarier than you thought, and that not everything these guys do will be completely hilarious and engaging. We watched Slaughterhouse Rulez starring Simon Pegg for this year's final episode of Nothing Spookies.
To self-identify to Nothing Spookies, where we ask the question, the fright is this. It's the podcast that goes through an actor's filmography and chooses the most anonymous and culturally untalked about movies that they've made and decide whether or not they've got a certain something or if they're just a whole lot of nothing. I'm Kaz Lesgard.
And I'm Jameson Rafter.
And today we're talking about Simon Pegg and his 2018 film Slaughterhouse Rulez. Now, Jameson, on our terminal two-part episode, which we always meant to be a two-parter.
Yeah.
That was always our plan.
Uh-huh.
We mentioned that in 2018, Margot Robbie and Simon Pegg were in two films together. One was Terminal. This is the other one.
Yeah. Did we mention that? I completely forgot about that.
We did. It was somewhat of a footnote, but we did mention that. So we're closing the trilogy.
All right. Well, I was delightfully surprised to see Margot Robbie pop up into this movie.
She zoomed in her performance, right. as you would put it. But it is October finally. We are finally. Halloween is encroaching.
Yes.
This is not us recording in September anymore. This is actually the spooky season.
Our final Halloween episode of the year, and we just made it under the door for October.
We did it one, and we did a movie that arguably, no, it's a horror movie. It's far more of a horror movie than the last movie that we talked about.
Yeah.
Although I was initially concerned during the first hour of watching this, and I'm like, oh god, did I pick another movie that's not technically a horror movie?
I was about to text you and be like, hey, you know that movie that I suggested? That you said, hey, that's not really a horror movie. I would have been like, hey, at least it's got a ghost in it and it's about a haunting. But we'll save that for a future episode.
We'll save that for a future episode. You know what, Jameson? You might be right.
Yeah.
But anyway, the horror gets there. It gets there eventually.
The horror gets there?
The horror.
Oh, okay.
The horror.
All
it's
right.
too early to enunciate.
Who's our guest today, Cass?
Our guest today is a very exciting guest. You have heard his voice in the recent Resident Evil 4 remake as Mike, the friendly helicopter pilot.
But not the other Mike that we had on the show last time.
But not the
4.
Mike his actual name is Mike. I know that gets a little confusing. Thank you for bringing that up. But he's also appeared in such TV shows as Yellow Jackets and When Calls the Heart. But he is perhaps best known as fan favorite character Mr. Parker from fan favorite TV show DC Legends of Tomorrow. # Save Legends of Tomorrow. Erik Gow is with us in the studio. Hi, Erik. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Erik, not to immediately put you on the spot for coming in here, but I was going through the list of past guests that we've had on the show. All of our past guests are our personal friends, of course, as are you. We're not quite at the point yet where we are inviting people to come on the show that we just flat out don't know at all. But I'm going through the list of past guests that we've had before. I think there's a solid argument to be made that you are the most famous person we've ever had on this show. You have a following. Mr. Parker has like this intense fan following. Just for my sake of following you on social media, I see the fan engagement based on that character between you and the people, and I see the way that you speak to your fan base is so heartwarming, and so it's such a pleasure just to observe from an outside perspective. Indeed, if Mr. Rogers himself had a Twitter account, it might indeed look a little something like yours.
That's such a sweet thing to say. I mean, it helps that I got to play a character that people really connected with. At their heart is very wholesome, but also has a lot of baggage.
Yeah,
a lot of their own baggage.
Yeah.
So there's like this beautiful Venn diagram of people who are like, and also I'm going to say like the Legends of Tomorrow fan base are like the most toxically positive, friendly, welcoming group of people I've ever encountered.
That was a dangerous start to that sentence. And then
the funny thing, I said toxically positive, which is like, no, it's not even toxically positive. They're just like absolutely
just
genuine. Yeah, because toxic positivity is a real thing that is not good. No, I mean it in the sense of toxic is not the right word. Like just absurdly not because it's not intense because there's not a negative word I can genuinely associate with it. The funny thing is, I've met up with fans like IRL in real life who've just like sent me messages and be like, "Hey, I'm going to be in Vancouver." I'm like, "Cool, let's hang out." I've gone bowling with folks. I've hung out on Granville Island. Rodham, who does a bunch of fan art. They're from Israel. Like they came over with like their parents for a holiday once. They're like, "Oh yeah, I'm on Granville Island. Like just grab a tea." Just like cool people who have reached out. People from like New York on holiday. Yeah, people are great, especially when the show was not being continued. I got a bunch of emails from folks, because I was releasing some fan content and things in support of the hashtag Save Legends of Tomorrow, and people were being, like, very open and vulnerable in, like, DMs and stuff, who were, like, really sad about the show ending, and in a very Mr. Rogers way, being like, yeah, just letting people, like... So, funny enough, I'm gonna pivot to Slaughterhouse Rulez.
Yeah.
Speaking of school chum type things, Kaz and I are school chums.
What a thematically appropriate movie for us to be doing. That's
right?
That's entirely why I picked it.
Yeah, anyways, we had a lovely teacher, and I remember Brad was a guy at our school, but they used to always have this policy of like, hey, you know what, if you ever just need to get something off your chest, like, send a message to me. Like, I may not respond. You may not even want to respond, but just know that what you said was, like, witnessed, and someone read it. Like, your thoughts is out in the world, and someone saw that. And I remember, like, putting a little message out during that time for, like, fans being like, hey, I may not have time to respond to everybody, but no, I got like lovely messages of people just saying like how much the show meant to them and all these things, and it was really lovely that people were able to just reach out and sort of like share that part. And when you get to see the really awesome side of a fan base, because that's what I love about fans, they're fanatical in that sense of they love something so much, but seeing a fan base that loves something so much and just keeps it as like, I love this thing. Like, even when there was, like, all the studio heads and things, they were like, they're canceling the show. It wasn't really hate for anybody. It was just like, please, just keep it going. We love the show so much. Whereas I've seen other campaigns with other franchises where it's like, oh, my God. Yeah. Like, oh.
It's the difference between something, as you said, toxically positive and positively toxic.
Just toxic. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And TV is going through such a flux currently right now. We're still trying to figure out what the landscape even looks like in this world of streaming and AI extras and other things that people are consistently nervous about. But one of the, I think, like, the exciting things about the current state of TV is that truly nothing is canceled. You know, like, if there's enough fan demand for it, Legends of Tomorrow could come back in some form if it's like a TV movie or like an animated spin-off. Who's to say? Like, nothing gets canceled anymore. Frasier is back. Like, it's the Wild West.
I watched Frasier this week. It's insanity. Like, and they say it's like, oh, you know, Freddie, 20 years ago, and I'm like, 20 years ago? Oh, yeah. Jesus.
I actually thought it was longer than that.
Yeah, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. Yeah. As a side note, like, that was such a seminal piece of viewing for me as a child. Like,
because it's always
Frasier. Oh yeah, and
one of the greatest sitcoms of the 90s.
Oh, culture exists somewhere, and we didn't really have it.
This is what comedy is. This is what the high class of people. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the kids on the playground didn't get it because for me it was like, what's funny to you? I'm like, I don't know, like Frasier, and this hour has 22 minutes. It's like, yep, okay, that says a lot.
I'm just imagining young Erik on the playground now, and like everyone's like running around and playing tag, and you're just wearing like a suit and like, this is like a 67 Bordeaux. Yes.
That's not the only thing that's Bordeaux. Let's go into this episode. Let's talk about Simon Pegg.
Oh boy. Okay, well, let's get into this.
That's totally a Marty Crane line too. Let's get on.
Okay, so Erik, so I asked you for some examples of who you wanted to talk about on the show, and when you said Simon Pegg, now Simon Pegg isn't like immediately a name one would think of when we're trying to program a Halloween block of our podcast, but I gravitated towards that one when you mentioned it because it gave me the opportunity to talk about Hard Stop, one of my favorite movies ever, Shaun of the Dead.
100%.
Which we will... less about me, though. What is it about Simon Pegg that endears him to you? What is it about that career in particular that made you want to talk about him?
Well, I remember my first introduction to Simon Pegg. I was doing some summer theater on the island, and I had a friend who'd spent a lot of time in the UK, and they introduced me to the show Spaced.
Oh, amazing.
And this would have been like early 2000. Like the show was still, it wasn't still on, but it was still like very recent, and it was that sort of thing where that sort of like nerd culture, all the Edgar Wright things, and it was something I had never seen before in Canadian programming and just sort of general North American programming. I was also in Qualicum Beach, so I was surrounded by like British people all the time, so I was learning about, like I was watching Father Ted, I was watching Spaced, just all these different BBC series, so it gave me this sort of outlet of being like, oh, there's a style of humor that exists that I've never been introduced to before, but I feel like, oh, okay, this is a thing that speaks to me. So even watching a quirky show like Spaced, where I'm like, okay, I recognize this is a sitcom, but this is like absurdism. This is really interesting stuff. The jokes, it's also all this nerd culture, but it's this sort of like high concept nerd culture, and it's self-referential and all of these things, which I didn't know could be on like a sitcom. Where it's still like, this is still situational comedy to a degree. And for me, that really clicked. And then watching Simon Pegg's career after that point as well, it was seeing all of these choices of shows that he would make. And I always find if I watch something of Simon Pegg's, whether I'm a big fan of it or not, I'm like, oh, it's an interesting show. There's interesting stuff going on, which for me, artists in general, is always my big thumbs up. Is like, I'd be happier if I absolutely hate something that somebody like a movie or something, but I can appreciate the hell out of what they were trying to do, and as opposed to like, I've seen so many movies where it's like, it was fine. And and I'm done with movies that are fine.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of those on the show.
Where it's like, oh, I don't think that movie worked, but God, I love that they tried.
What a concept, and they gave it a shot. Yeah. I got into space relatively late. I want to say like I only got into it around like 2011, 2012. So by then, back in the early 2000s, when it was sort of the nerd subculture that it was embracing and incorporating into itself, by the time I watched it, nerd culture had taken over. So things weren't back in the day where they were referencing the Matrix and Star Wars and stuff. That was just happening everywhere. So I didn't really appreciate it on that level. What I did appreciate of it was, this is Edgar Wright's director demo. And this is Simon Pegg's actor demo. And I was like, these two guys together are a fucking force to be reckoned with. And it makes all the sense in the world that they've essentially tied their careers almost intrinsically together.
Yeah, to a point. I think Edgar Wright is in his period right now where he's attempting to make somewhat more serious movies. But I imagine Jameson coming to Spaced after I'd
seen like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz,
the Cornetto trilogy, and I imagine it's going back and sort of seeing, oh, this is the Rosetta Stone for everything that came forward.
This is the seed that grew the oak tree.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go into his career right now, but running through his filmography and writing things down, I mean, he's in some stinkers, and he's in a ton of nothing movies. We chose this one because it's still 2 months of Halloween, which I'm realizing James and I've been forgetting to do.
I've noticed.
I have the Takata sound effect, and I keep forgetting to add it in.
You're only human.
But we could absolutely return to Simon Pegg and do another episode on him, because he is in so many movies that don't exist at all. And we will get into all of them, but of the ones that I have seen, even the ones that are failures that I don't like, you can't say that Simon Pegg is sleepwalking through any of these roles. Even if it's a bad movie, he's still giving 100%. He's a very dedicated actor, and you can tell that he is very appreciative of where he is in his career. And he should be, because he's gotten to do so many amazing things. He's this insane litmus test of nerd culture, and he's in so many properties.
Oh, I mean, like,
let's get into it.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's got like the crown of like king of the nerds, right? Just through his exposure through the Cornetto trilogy and through Space. And
he's an authority. Like, even his writing in the Star Trek series and Star Wars, like, just on a creator side. And to what you're saying, that idea of, like, he doesn't sleepwalk through anything. If you look at his producing and his writing and everything else, he's involved in all of these projects. He has stakes in it.
Cares.
And he's probably been there from the beginning of that project to the end. And you can see that in all of his work.
All right, so Simon Pegg. He got to start in a variety of British sitcoms and sketch shows, including such titles as Six Pairs of Pants, Asylum, Faith in the Future, Hippies, and Is It Bill Bailey? Is it? Who's to say?
All right. You tell me. You're the
Bill Bailey, of course, is one of those aforementioned great British character actors who he gave a role to in Spaced. He's
Bilbo, right?
He's Bilbo Bagshot, and he's also great in his own sitcom Black Books. You ever see Black Books? Ah, Black Books is hilarious. Simon Pegg also appears in an episode of that. His first film, unsurprisingly, is a British comedy based on a short-lived British sketch show. It is the 1999. It is the film Guest House Paradiso, which is a spin-off of the comedy series Bottom, which is a sketch show that stars Rick Mayall and Adrian Edmondson, who play a couple of wacky characters who run a hotel. And then, yes, as you say, from 1999 to 2001, he co-created, along with Jessica Stevenson, the show Spaced. But a couple of slackers pretend to be a couple in order to rent a flat. Edgar Wright directed all of the episodes. Only 14 episodes. Like, we talk about, like, Spaced in terms of, like, this cultural landmark, but of course the thing about British TV is that it's also short. They're also, it's so easy to, like, lose yourself in watching British TV because it ends. It has a definitive end. It doesn't go on for like 8 seasons.
Absolutely. Now, we're also forgetting to mention the American spinoff.
Oh, God.
Oh, don't tell me there's a fucking spinoff of that.
Was that Joel McHale?
I don't know if it was Joel
I think that
McHale,
was
but I know it exists.
Crowd.
The IT crowd, you're right.
I have searched online, and I've tried to find it because I know it exists.
It's just a pilot, though, right?
I believe it's the pilot, but I think on IMDb Pro, they list it as a, like, made-for-TV movie or something like that. It's something odd like that, but there was the American, and it did not take. It's, like, famously did not take.
I have to assume Edgar Wright had no involvement with that. Like, in the same way that, like...
I think he did.
Really?
But I think he's credited, like, for
like,
writing.
The executive producer on like, The American Office. He's like... I can't imagine he would just hand that off to an American production company.
Well, even as I say that, I believe he's credited with writing it, so I don't know if he was there for any of the other
I think legal reasons you have to, like, credit whoever, like, the creators of the show are, and so I think, like, Simon Pegg probably gets a writing credit on whatever American Spaced is. I had completely forgotten about that, Erik.
Yeah.
All right, well, stay tuned for a future episode on the pilot of the American Spaced, because it seems like this thing doesn't exist. That could be an interesting...
It does,
yeah.
but,
well,
like,
it exists, but it feels like they've actively buried it.
Yeah.
Moving on. Okay, so in between Spaced and Sean, from 2001 to 2004, he does a variety of things. He's in 2 episodes of Band of Brothers, which is a show that just an absurd amount of people are on.
Yeah. Oh, man, who would he have been on Band of
I don't know. He would have had an American accent.
And again, would have seen that show. Well, he could have been British. British people? There were British people in World War II.
In the war?
In the war,
they were in the war before them.
It is possible, yeah.
In Band of Brothers, though. Because that was Spielberg, right?
It was Spielberg. I haven't seen Band of Brothers in a really long time. I think Band of Brothers is exclusively about the Americans, though, is it not?
It is.
Yeah.
But because it's also not Pegg's first time with Spielberg, but you'll get to that, I'm sure. Yeah.
It is his first time with Spielberg.
First time, but not last time.
It will not be the last time, no. He's also in 12 episodes of a sketch show called Big Train. He appears in small roles in a series of films, including a couple of Steve Coogan films, The Parole Officer and 24-Hour Party People, and he's also in the excellent Willem Dafoe film The Reckoning. But in 2004... he co-writes and stars in Shaun of the Dead, and that, of course, is the movie that changes his entire career. It becomes this massive crossover success with the North America, and it just introduces the world to this big British boom of comedy that they had never realized before, and it comes right in the epicenter of this sort of zombie revival that's happening that I think you could credit starting with 28 Days Later and the start of the Walking Dead comic and probably Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. But yeah, I mean, Shaun of the Dead, a movie that I can just quote verbatim. I've seen it so many times. It was such a seminal movie.
The funny thing about that, I was watching an interview with Simon Pegg. Apparently the idea came from the Spaced episode.
Of course.
Where they were doing the things, because in the premise of the episode is Tim does so much speed that he's sort of like having this zombie dream.
Yeah.
And then him and Edgar were like, oh, well, we should totally do a zombie movie. But the plot came from him and Nick Frost would always go to the same pub, and Edgar Wright would want to go to like one where like more notable people would go to. They're like, no, we don't want to go. And Simon Pegg's then girlfriend, now wife, was like, we should go to a different pub. And they're like, no, we like this pub. So the whole idea came around this pub, and they wrote this movie basically about a guy who doesn't leave this pub. And they were like, oh, well, this should be the zombie movie that we make as well. So it became this thing about not leaving a pub, throw in zombies, and it's like, so beautiful.
And just honor all the zombie tropes that came before it. And fans of the genre are going to appreciate all the winks and nods. And it's a genuinely good zombie movie
It's one of the best zombie movies.
And Sean is like one of the greatest underdog, everyman type heroes in cinema.
It gets the formula right in that a lot of comedies that are also like other genres seem to fail, in that it takes itself completely seriously as a horror movie, and it doesn't. And there are deeply tragic, very serious things that happen in Shaun of the Dead.
Where he has to kill his mom is heartbreaking.
Which a lot of people don't say is a fault of the movie. A lot of people can't get past that moment. A lot of people think that that's like a tonal shift that kind of like breaks the movie for them. But for other people, they're like, I for one appreciated that they took that moment so seriously, and they're just really in the shit after that moment, and things just kind of, the comedy does sort of like dip out from that point at the end, but they still find a way to
when he makes out with Bill Nye's character, like the whole stepdad dynamic and that stuff is like, that's beautiful. Nick Frost at the end with the Terminator crying like a baby.
And the part where they're like in the storeroom closet, and it's just him and his girlfriend left in there, and you can hear just the horde of zombie outside just moaning, trying to claw their way in, and it's like, now this is really scary again. You're not getting out of here alive. Like, this is harrowing moment. I love that scene.
So, following the success of Shaun of the Dead, 2005, I'm just going to mention he has a brief cameo alongside Edgar Wright in George A. Romero's Land of the Dead, sort of this zombie resurgence boom coming out in the early 2000s. The man who basically created zombies as we know it said, I'm coming back. I got another movie in the chamber, and he got it all together, and he released a new zombie movie, and everyone collectively went, yeah, it's fine. This particular cameo, there is sort of like this Mad Max society of people who have found a way to live among the zombies, and they kind of have like zombie fight club in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
And Pegg and Wright are two zombies who are like chained up by the neck, and people are taking photos with them. It's a blink and you'll miss it cameo, but they are indeed in it. 2006 though, it's so wild that his immediate follow-up to Shaun of the Dead is Mission Impossible 3, which is one of multiple franchises he's currently running right now in a role that was originally meant for Ricky Gervais.
No, shoot. What? I don't know what I can say on
you can swear. You can absolutely swear. It's totally fine. The show used to have the word fuck in the title. It's totally fine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then we decided, 5 years in, we realized
Did the algorithm not like that?
No,
it so much!
I tried to talk him out of it back in the day, and he was like, no, this will be cool. This will stick us apart. Yeah, we were edgy, moody teenagers.
We were, exactly. Back in our edgelord days. Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's wild. Like, he has like 2 brief scenes in Mission Impossible 3 where he's just like the guy in the chair. He's just like this brief tech guy. And then, leap forward to today when Mission Impossible 7 is out, and he's like the third lead of that series now. He's so tied to the DNA of the Mission Impossible franchise, you can't imagine a movie without him.
Is that hyperbole? Are there 7?
There are 7, soon to be 8.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
I say keep going. I mean, they're serviceable and fun, actually.
Yeah, they're not bad yet. They haven't made a bad one yet, so what are you going to do? Okay, also in 2006. Now, here begins the run of Simon Pegg Nothing movies. So these are all possible future episodes. 2006, he's in the black comedy Big Nothing, which is about dumb criminals trying to do a heist or whatever. He stars in that movie with one David Schwimmer, a classic pairing. Also in 2007, he's in another Nothing movie called The Good Night, an indie dramedy from Gwyneth Paltrow's brother Jake Paltrow, which stars Simon, Gwyneth Paltrow, Martin Freeman, Penelope Cruz, and Danny DeVito. That's a whole lot of people in that cast. 2007, he's in the romantic comedy Run, Fat Boy, Run, in which he runs a marathon and tries to woo Tandy Wade Newton, in a movie which is directed by David Schwimmer. So I guess they became buddies.
That's right.
David Schwimmer had like a brief UK phase because he was also on like Little Britain and stuff. Like, so he had like a weird like 3-year period where he was appearing in a lot of UK projects. Yeah. But also in 2007, The Boys Are Back. It's Hot Fuzz.
Yep.
Yeah.
A movie that a lot of people say is superior to Shaun of the Dead. I still love Shaun of the Dead, but I totally get that argument. I feel like...
Yeah. Hot Fuzz is my favorite of the Cornetto trilogy.
Right.
And I don't know if it's a DVD extra or just something that they collectively released on YouTube together, but it's Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg breaking down the story.
It's a geniusly plotted movie.
What is that called where it's like a word bubble and then they have all the ideas that flow into it? It's not a Venn diagram, but it's
I don't know. I'm just thinking like word association.
It's like a word association thing. And I don't know, they just break down the scripting process of it and how things are set up in that movie. And it's a 10-minute little crash course on how they wrote the movie. And it's fantastic. And I highly encourage anyone who's trying to get into film or screenwriting to at least check it out.
Okay, it's on my list now.
Yeah, and also just watch Hot Fuzz again because
there's
never a bad time to watch that movie. And also, much like Shaun of the Dead, that's a movie that's full of people in the supporting cast that now are like huge stars. Like Olivia Colman has like a very funny supporting role in that.
Yeah, she later went on to play the Queen of England.
Exactly,
and she's making all these sexual innuendo references.
That was the first movie that made me realize, holy shit, Timothy Dalton needs to be in more stuff.
Hell yeah, he does. He's a great villain in that.
He's fucking awesome in that. Yeah. Okay, so 2008 is his first American leading role. This is the U.S. studios trying to figure out, okay, Simon Pegg is like a hot property. What are we going to get him in? And the answer to that was How to Lose Friends and Alienate People. A movie that kind of didn't go nowhere, even though it's like a big, expensive studio comedy with him, Kirsten Dunst, Megan Fox, and Jeff Bridges, and he just plays like this UK, I guess like magazine writer who gets poached by like an American studio, and he's like mean. I've seen that movie.
I'm the same way. It's like I know the title. Yeah. I know I saw it because I've always been like, oh, Simon Pegg's something. I'll watch that. I do not remember that movie. Even when I was looking at the IMDb page, I was like, there's a few of those movies where like, I know I watched this. It's like the Taylor Swift concert thing where it's like, my brain no longer remembers what happened.
I don't know if I quite get that analogy.
I don't know. There was that news story recently where like people who went to like the Taylor Swift concert, was it Taylor Swift? It was some like big concert where they had like an amnesia after, where it was like this like...
They had like a mind wipe thing. What is happening at the Taylor Swift concert?
Like they pumped in gas into the crowd?
Not like everybody, but just like
hey,
this
my wallet's gone.
phenomenon of like people who like they went to the concert and then like they just didn't really remember it. I guess
they were
like
screaming
so...
the entire time.
I mean that, but... Unless I just made up something crazy, but then we'll pitch that as like, an idea.
Now I'm picturing Jamie. Now I'm picturing like Taylor with like a big bag with like a $sign on the outside. Like, ha, the fools! Yeah. That was my plan the entire time.
And then Adam West Batman crashes through a ceiling and it's like, stop right there, Taylor Swift.
Oh no. All right, 2009. The next of his major franchises. He of course is Mr. Scott in the J.J. Abrams rebooted Star Trek series. I mean, thoughts on the J.J. Abrams Star Trek?
I was never a Star Trek person growing up.
Yeah.
So I love Star Trek now. And it was one of those things where people were like, they're messing with the timeline and the canon and all these things. I'm like, I'm fine with this. Yeah. This is cool.
Sort of the first movie to kind of mess with the timeline, so to speak. And now that's kind of all cinema is now, is messing with timelines.
I mean, like, it got me into Star Trek. Like, that movie got me into Star Trek. And now I'm like loving the most recent stuff. Strange New Worlds, the Below Decks or whatever that is, like all the Star Trek things. It like introduced me to that franchise, so I'm grateful for that movie.
Yeah, and he's absolutely perfect in the role. He's a natural successor to James Doohan, and he's taken
who was Canadian,
of course. Yes,
they'll never cast an actual Scotsman to play Scotty. Though I do think he actually did like some proper dialect coaching so he could nail whatever specific region of Scotland Scotty's meant to be from.
Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
So his wife is Scottish, and apparently his family, or her family, like, they were his language coaches, or his, like, dialect coaches for that, where he would just, like, go to them and get help.
Okay.
Which apparently, I mean, if you do that kind of thing, no one's gonna like it online and stuff. But apparently he gets more positive feedback from Scottish people than, like, English people who are like, your Scottish accent sucks. It's like, well, you just...
Yeah.
Well, if you married into one, I imagine a lot of them are kind of all like, you're one of
Oh,
us.
you really fucked it up.
Apparently, a lot of the, like, the little sort of, like, dialogue, the idiolect type stuff, or, like, certain phrases that he would, like, throw into it, he would get from them. Like, so it's, like, more that sort of, like, authentic Scottish vernacular.
Yeah. Instead of saying, I don't know, tosser, you use this instead. Yeah, yeah.
Also in 2009, he lends his voice to Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs as a character named Buck, who is some sort of weasel-type character. He would go on to continue to voice that character in 2012's Ice Age Continental Drift, 2016's Ice Age Collision Course, and 2022's Ice Age The Adventures of Buck Wild. Holy shit, there are a lot of Ice Age movies. 2010, he is in the John Landis comedy Burke and Hare, which we almost did an episode on, but it's just not streaming anymore. But that's he and Andy Serkis play a couple of real-life grave-robbing murderers who used to kill people and then sell the bodies off to doctors to use for medical experiments in a wacky British comedy. 2010, he also voices the character of Reepicheep in Chronicles of Narnia: The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Talk about a franchise that, like, it's a franchise that started strong and everyone was still, like, chomping at the bit for, like, another Lord of the Rings. Champing at the bit, thank you. I like chomping at the bit.
Is it champing at the bit? Is that the
because horses champ on the thing.
Oh, I learned something new today.
All right,
I love words.
This is an educational podcast, yes. Yeah, and then the subsequent movies were just like...
Did they finish the series?
They did not. They stopped at Dawn Treader. Although now, hot off the heels of Barbie, apparently Greta Gerwig is doing Narnia. So they've given her... They've given her the reins to the kingdom, as it would say. So those are safe hands to leave that franchise with, I would say. 2011, he is back with Nick Frost, but they are not with Edgar Wright for the first time. This is the film Paul.
Yeah.
Where, it's from the director of Superbad. It is, by all accounts, an American comedy that they are the stars of, and I believe they also wrote. And yeah, they're just a couple of British nerds who go to Comic-Con and they meet an actual alien with the stoner voice of Seth Rogen.
Buddy road trip movie.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
And yeah, the alien just comes up with, like, the last 50 years of pop culture. Apparently.
Pretty much, yeah. That's their explanation as to why the alien has all these pop culture jokes. Is because he came up with them. Yeah.
I don't know, I liked that movie, but you can definitely tell that it's missing that third secret ingredient, which was Edgar Wright's deft hand.
Exactly.
This is clearly something that they probably pitched to him, and he was like, maybe not, but you guys go ahead and have your own project. You know, you're like the new tied together comedy duo, like fucking...
What year was that?
Owen and
2011.
Would that have been around Scott Pilgrim time? Was he just busy?
You know what? I think
Maybe.
that's what happened. I think the same year he's probably working on Scott Pilgrim. I love Shaun of the Dead, but inarguably his best movie.
It's great.
Yeah,
That's
without
one
a
of my
doubt.
favorite movies.
But 2011, a big year for Pegg because he's also back with Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, where he is part of the team now.
Because he does his field agent training or whatever. Yeah,
he's
a spy.
He graduates.
Is that would you be a spy at that point?
He is a spy at that point. And I remember, like, that's the movie we're kind of all like, this is a little silly. Simon Pegg is now, like, an agent in the field, even though he's, like, the Shaun of the Dead guy. And now you don't even blink at it, because he's just done so many action movies now. He's just kind of all like, this is who this character is now, and it's not even ironic anymore. He just is. But also, Kim and Frost got to do 2 movies in 2011. Here's this long-awaited reunion with Steven Spielberg in The Adventures of Tintin, where they play Detective Thompson and Detective Thompson. But of course, that is a movie that I feel like people are rediscovering now. It's a movie that kind of, like, flew under the radar. Even though it's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
It's great, and, like, technically it's an amazing achievement. I mean, it's kind of funny how, like, Robert Zemeckis had this period where he was doing, like, the mocap actor movies with, like, Polar Express and all those other, like, weird nightmare movies. And then Spielberg made one of them one time, and he just knocked it out of the park. It's a great-looking movie. Everyone is very well cast in it.
I have to think a lot of the credit has to go to Peter Jackson as well.
Yes.
And because it's Peter Jackson, there's likely never going to be another Tintin movie because he doesn't need the money. He doesn't need to work.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the plan...
He's very picky about his projects.
I remember when that came out, the plan was that Spielberg would direct the first one, then Jackson would direct the second one, and then they would direct the third one together. That was like the plan or whatever, but
that's nice.
No one really... I think the Tintin movie was successful, but it didn't really get like a following because it's like... It's just one of those properties, too, where it's like... It's recognizable. People remember that comic series. They remember the TV show.
It's a French comic series?
It's a French comic series. So it's bigger in Europe, I imagine, but I don't know if like the American audience for Tintin really exists.
Not like Paddington.
No, exactly. I mean, no. It's surprising Pegg has never been in a Paddington movie. He
there's only two.
That's true. It could be time.
Wait for Paddington 7.
Yeah.
And then he'll be a full
Ghost
Buckingham
Protocol.
Palace guard. Yeah.
So 2013, he returns...
Say that again, please. 2000?
2013! No, he returns to two of his franchises. He is in Star Trek Into Darkness, a.k.a. the one that no one likes. But also, it's the final film in the Cornetto trilogy, The World's End, which is, I would say, the least successful of the three movies, but still like a very watchable movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good emotion in it.
I think people just weren't expecting it to be as much of a dramedy as it was. Because it really is about
because it was Martin Freeman,
Paddy
Nick Frost,
Considine, Eddie Marsan and Nick Frost are the gang.
And Pierce Brosnan's in it, too.
Yeah, keeping the trend of past Bond actors showing up and being antagonists in it. The thing that makes that movie unique is that they flip the dynamics in that one, and Pegg is sort of the washout loser, and Frost is the buttoned-up, responsible one with the family. And it was a great... The World's End is a great acting showcase, I think, for Nick Frost more than anyone else. It was kind of the first time everyone's like, oh, I'm seeing a different shade of this guy now. 2014, he continues his series of movies that don't exist with Hector and the Search for Happiness, which is about, as the title belies, about a guy who is trying to find some meaning in his life. He's also in a hitman comedy called Kill Me 3 Times. That also doesn't exist. He also provides a voice for the Leica animated film The Box Trolls, which is a charming movie.
Was that DreamWorks?
I don't know if DreamWorks released it. It was Leica.
Because that's an animated one, right?
It's the stop motion people behind Paranorman and Kubo and Coraline. I think they always have different distributors. I'm not sure. But, yeah, that's an absolutely charming little movie. He's in that. Nick Frost is also in that, so they're always doing projects together, those boys.
It's fucking Crosby and Hope, these two.
Basically. 2015, he has an absolutely packed year. He's in the Terry Jones-directed movie Absolutely Anything, which both proved to be the final collaboration between the remaining Monty Python members and also, sadly, the final voice performance of Robin Williams. This is a wild premise where a group of aliens are trying to decide whether or not to blow up the Earth, and they choose Simon Pegg as sort of like the guy to give like otherworldly powers to, and if he does good with them, the world will be saved, and if he doesn't, they'll blow up the Earth. And he makes his dog talk, and the dog is Robin Williams. It's a movie that came out and kind of disappeared, but it's definitely out there, and he's the lead of it.
It's funny how many of these on the list are like, oh yeah, movies. Where it's like, I remember that.
Yeah. That's our spin-off podcast.
Yeah.
Oh yeah!
Oh yeah!
He's also in a romantic comedy called Man Up with him and Lake Bell, which I think was a UK release only. He's also in Mission Impossible Rogue Nation. And because he's best buddies with J.J. Abrams, he's one of the few people that get to be in both Star Trek and Star Wars. He appears in Star Wars The Force Awakens as Unkar Plutt.
Trash vendor.
1/4 portion.
Oh, that guy.
That guy, yeah. The guy in the beginning who's the big guy. I mean, yeah, it's not surprising you don't know Simon Pegg is in the movie because he's a big creature. He's a big monster alien. 2016, he's in Star Trek Beyond, which he also co-wrote.
Yep.
And I think is the best of those Abrams-produced Star Trek movies. I think it's... Star Trek Beyond is just them on a Dane mission. They're just going around and trekking stars. And that's why I kind of like it the best.
Is that the Cumberbatch one?
No, that's Idris Elba is the villain in the third one, but he also has a ton of makeup on, so it's understandable if you forget that he's the villain in that. But it's the one where the ship crash lands on a planet and they have to spend the entire time figuring out how to get off the planet.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of split into different groups. Good movie. I like that one a lot. 2018, another massive year for him. He is in previous episode Terminal. He is in today's episode Slaughterhouse Rulez. He's in Mission Impossible Fallout, and he's back with Spielberg in Ready Player One, where he plays sort of like the curator of the online world or whatever, and then he shows up at the very end. And surprise! It was Simon Pegg the entire time.
There's our Mark Rylance connection.
There's our Mark Rylance.
Yeah,
you also wanted to do Mark Rylance. Unfortunately, Mark Rylance is going to be one of those actors that he just doesn't have.
He doesn't do a lot of nothing movies.
He doesn't do a lot of nothing movies. He's
some stuff flies under the radar, but I wouldn't call them nothing movies.
No, we might get around to that one of these days. He might do a movie that doesn't exist. Speaking of movies that don't
movies all exist, they're just not popular.
Technically, this movie that we're doing today exists.
Exactly.
Okay, look. Every time I say a movie doesn't exist, it obviously exists. They got together and they filmed it and they released it. It's a fun way of saying that they have no cultural background.
This list feels a bit like a Mandela effect at times, where you'll say a title of a movie, you're like, I think that movie happened. Man Up. I know I watched Man Up, but if you gave me any synopsis, I would just have to go.
I know they made a poster and a trailer for that, but did anyone see it? Yeah, that's kind of what we're going for.
They only exist when you bring them up in conversation. When you're not actively talking about them, they cease to exist.
It's like a Tinkerbell thing.
Exactly. Speaking of a movie that does not exist, 2019, he does an indie film called Lost Transmissions, where he plays a music producer who goes off his meds for schizophrenia. This sounds like a blast. This may be the movie that he has made that just has like absolutely no following whatsoever. I don't think we'll do an episode on it, Jameson, because it seems like a bummer.
Okay.
But also in 2019, a limited series that like I consistently forget came out, and like I really need to get around to watching it before Netflix disappears it, because it's definitely one of those shows that I think is in danger of just disappearing one of these days. But he's one of many celebrities who provides his voice for The Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance.
Yeah.
Did either of you see that?
I did, yeah.
I need to get around to that. I've just never found the time. He's in that, and also from 2019 to 2022, he appears in a handful of episodes of The Boys.
Yep.
Quite pointedly, because in the original comic run, the character of Huey is very much styled after Simon Pegg.
Am I crazy? Does he voice Huey in one of the animated ones?
I believe he voices Huey in the animated ones, and of course in the TV show he plays Huey's father.
Yes.
And
he just got too old to play young Huey.
Exactly. Well, yeah, he's pushing 50 now, I imagine. 2020, we talked about this on the Margot Robbie episode. He's in the film Inheritance, where he plays a guy who's being held captive in a basement, and Lily Collins inherits him.
I liked that one.
Oh, you did?
I did. I liked the premise of that movie.
You sounded almost hostile when you
know.
said you did.
No, and that's
hold
fair.
Hold me back.
Again,
I'm sorry.
it's that...
I really hated that movie, but that's I'm excited to hear your take on it.
You know, but it's funny. I'm thinking, it's like, I remember watching that movie and having a strong opinion about it.
Casted too, apparently.
I am so sorry. I didn't mean to be so insulting.
Well, no, it's been so long since I saw it. It's sticking out in my head where there was something about the premise of that movie where I was like, yeah, that was really, it kind of reminded me that whole like person locked away, that what's this about kind of thing. I enjoyed that. Yeah, well, I mean, but it's that thing.
I did it for you.
But it's,
didn't mean to sound so apoplectic.
No,
you know what? I haven't seen this movie. I'll be the fucking tiebreaker. All right.
You can recognize that a movie doesn't work, but be like, yeah, I can still find stuff in that like I really like that.
All right.
All right, to wrap things up, 2020, him and Nick Frost did a short-lived 7-episode Amazon Prime limited series called Truth Seekers.
I watched that, yeah.
He also provides a voice for the Netflix movie America, the Motion Picture. He's also a voice in a movie I've talked about on this show, the 2022 animated film Luck, which is an Apple release.
I got like 2 minutes into that
terrible
movie.
film, just a horrible. But he plays like a talking cat.
Yeah, no, my partner and I were like, "Oh, Simon Pegg, an animated thing," and we got like it was one of those ones where like when the animation just puts you off in a way where like when people talk about the myth of like changelings and stuff, where you just look at something and go like, "That's not my baby." It's like, no, I don't like those animated things. Yeah.
He's in now this truly is a movie that has no cultural footprint. 2022, he's in a film called The Disappearance of Toby Blackwood, which appears to be like a COVID movie. So it's a movie where like everyone filmed their part on Zoom. And then they edited everything together. There was a whole bunch of because it's like people needed to make something during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it's like we have a whole bunch of these movies that are technically like lockdown movies where it's like small casts in like one location. But I've never heard of this one. And then 2023, of course, he's in Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. And his most recent movie has a fantastic title. It is based on
I can't wait to see this one.
This one, yeah. It is a film called Nandor, Fodor, and the Talking Mongoose.
Another true story one.
Based on the story of a cryptid called Jeff the Talking Mongoose, which is a real thing that exists. Jeff spelled G-E-F, I imagine, and in this movie, Jeff is voiced by Neil Gaiman, and it's Simon Pegg, Minnie Driver, and Christopher Lloyd are in this movie.
And how can you not like that?
I mean, it's a great cast. I'm definitely going to check that out. And just a fantastic title. And there we go. That's the filmography of Mr. Simon Pegg.
That is a quite prolific filmography there, man. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't really, no pun intended, you can't really peg him in one genre.
All right, that's all the time we have for. I'd like to thank Joel Flynn and Luke Schuss. Yeah, no, absolutely.
No, it's just like, whatever, name a genre and he'll slip right into it. Action, comedy, horror, sci-fi. Like, he's done it all, baby.
All right, well, let's take a short break and we'll listen to a charity spot. And when we come back, we will get into Slaughterhouse Rulez with a Z, so you know it's cool.
Slaughterhouse Rulez!
Slaughterhouse Rulez!
Hi everyone. I want to get right to the point today with this episode's charity spot. The October 7th massacre in Israel undertaken by Hamas militants is absolutely horrifying, and we are all nervously waiting to see what will happen next. The conflict between Israel and Palestine is not something that I personally feel I am remotely qualified to comment on, so I will make no attempt to. All I know from what I've read over the past few weeks is that scores of collateral civilians have either lost their lives or are gravely injured. And if history is anything to go by, we can expect even more to come. So this week, our charity will be for the International Committee of the Red Cross, a neutral, impartial, and independent organization that provides aid to all those affected by global conflict and war. To make a donation, please visit the link in our show notes. Thank you.
Welcome back. No.
Increase the speed.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the show. What am I doing? Slaughterhouse Rulez. It is directed by Crispian Mills, who in his day job is a frontman for a psychedelic rock band, Kula Shaker.
Oh,
have you heard of them?
No,
I haven't. They're a bigger deal in the UK, I imagine. Their debut album, according to Wikipedia, was the highest-selling record, following Oasis's "Definitely Maybe," which was a huge fucking record.
Wow.
I take it they're a much bigger deal in the UK. They are, psychedelic rock that is a little Indian-inspired, a little Hindu, Hare Krishna type inspired, which, white British guy doing sort of Eastern-inspired music that runs the risk of being insufferable.
That is his faith, though. That is his faith.
That is his faith. Yes, absolutely. It sounds like he's actually pretty respectful, all things considered, to this. I mean, he's been doing it for over a decade, so I imagine.
Would you suggest that he stick to music?
We will get into that. He has directed 2 films.
Oh, really?
I have not seen the other one, but yeah, his day job, he is a rock musician. I've listened to a few Kula Shaker songs in preparation for this, and I can confidently say that they are fine. They're okay. I don't.
Okay.
It's not really my thing, but I read the Wikipedia article, and it kind of sounds like the fan base for this is something akin to like Grateful Dead, where it's not really like a concert, man. It's like a jam. We're all like a family. We're all one, peace and love, man.
Oh.
He's also the son of British filmmaker Ray Bolting, and his mother is former child actress Hayley Mills, who you might know from such Disney films as The Parent Trap.
I'm
But
very curious.
he has directed one other film, and it is also a horror comedy starring Simon Pegg. It is the 2012 film A Fantastic Fear of Everything, about a man who has, well, you can fill in the blanks there for yourself. I have not seen it. I have seen Slaughterhouse Rulez. However, it is a mixed bag, shall we say? I don't know. Let's get into it now.
Yeah.
What did we think here?
Well, when the movie finally got going, I thought it was pretty good.
I was initially a bit concerned for the first hour of this movie that once again I had picked back-to-back movies that weren't really horror movies. This movie does eventually get to a place where like people are being massacred and eaten by monsters and blood and guts are going everywhere. So I'm all like, okay, thank God, this actually is a horror movie to some degree.
Like, generously speaking, it's a slow burn to get to the horror stuff because they set up a lot of shit. And it's a very dense movie, I want to say, for the first hour, because there's a lot of characters and sort of a lot of background info that has to get explained to us. But then almost none of it has any payoff once the horror aspects get going. That said, the horror stuff is kind of fun.
Yep.
Yeah. Creatures. I like the baby one.
Yeah.
That was cute.
Yeah. It's a unique monster.
I also appreciated it was that classic horror trope of like, how do we get the heroine to take her shirt off? And it was that like, yep, that's how you do that, I guess.
But they did it in a way where they still kind of made her like a little bit of a girl boss.
Yeah.
Oh,
Where
yeah,
it's
she's a total badass.
She's being attacked by something, and the hero tries to step in, and she literally shoves him away, and it's all like, "No, I got this, femininity."
Yeah.
But it
traps it
ended
in her shirt and then just like bashes the shit out of it on a tree stump.
And that was around like the 3-hour mark of the movie.
Yeah.
Exactly. It was as if he got that advice. It's like, the best horror movies are when you really care about the characters, and they took that note to be like, what if we spent the most time with these characters?
Yeah.
But I didn't really care about them.
No.
Well, not because of expositional things.
Yeah.
Like, I thought the actors were fine. And it was like, oh, yeah, I like all of these characters. But the amount of time we spent with them, I'm like, well, tell me something about them. Like,
well, the whole time, like in that whole build-up, I was just waiting for some background no-name characters to bite it. Like the monsters come out.
Yeah.
Like 2 teens are sneaking off into the woods, and when's the monster going to come around and eat both of them? You know,
that's such a great point. That doesn't happen.
Yeah, like the crooked night watchman, he gets eaten. No one dies in this movie until like an hour.
Yeah,
this movie.
Exactly. Like any other horror movie, that would have been like the opening 5 minutes before like the titles drop or whatever. You see that exact scene that you just described, Jameson, of someone on campus going around, and it's like there's some sort of
you
terror
kids come
here.
out of there.
Yeah,
don't make me go in
so
there.
let us know. It's such a slow build to the eventual reveal of the subterranean monsters under the school here. It almost has like the same sort of like plot structure as From Dusk Till Dawn, except where you're watching that, and for the first hour there are no vampires, and there's not even any hint that there are going to be vampires. And then as soon as like the hour mark hits, it immediately becomes a different movie. This is not nearly as successful at that in terms of plotting.
No, they tease it for so long.
They do. They seed in the monsters.
They seed so much of it, like in the history of the school and sort of the
that whole
history
scene with the kid being like, okay, we gotta pass your test of the history. When was the school made? In 13? No, it was in this year.
Yeah.
And that. And it's
Some
like,
knight came back from the Crusades
with a
and fought
dog.
a demon, like a hellhound.
Also, they teased the dog, and the dog did not pay off.
The actual terrier?
Yeah, for a second I was like, is this the terrier from the painting?
Yeah, like, this dog is like somehow immortal.
Mr. Chips has survived. He's like 80 years old.
Some sort of guardian
like
of something. I was
like
so expecting that.
Yeah.
And no, I guess this family just really likes that breed of dog.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it.
All right.
The other problem is that it spends its first hour just setting up the characters and introducing this world that they live in. Part of the problem with trying to engage with this movie is that the scenario that they're in, the setting that they're in, is just this toxic environment, and part of the movie is sort of this breakdown of the boarding school system and how it essentially raises the next generation of young psychopaths. But the other surprising thing about this movie is that it does eventually become a monster movie. What's the most surprising about this movie, and it's not really in any of its marketing, it's mostly an anti-fracking satire.
Yeah.
And that's the bulk of the movie. It's kind of this moralistic message movie.
But the weird thing is, the monsters didn't feel like a metaphor for it. They weren't attached. If anything, the fracking woke them up.
Yeah.
But not even in a way where it's if we keep drilling too far, we Mines of Moria this shit.
Yeah. It's an allegorical
no.
thing like Godzilla. No, it's just
it really was
by
just
by fracking, we're disturbing their slumber, sort of thing. Yeah.
But even that seemed that didn't. It was,
And the fracking
it was very
didn't-
strange.
The fracking didn't create the monsters. The monsters have just kind of always existed as we learn from the history of this school and the first Earl of Slaughter that fought the monster off and whatever. And of course, it's depicted as a dragon. How does one describe these monsters?
I was going Hellhound.
I was going Terragrid.
Really, it's
Is that the
wait,
right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Terragrid.
What?
I don't even know what that is.
Those tiny can survive in any sort of.
Do you mean
Tardigrade?
Tardigrade, thank you.
Tardigrade.
Tardigrade.
Water horses? No, what are they called?
Water bears.
Water bears.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that
Maybe that's a
going on,
D&D
yeah.
thing that I just tucked away.
No, they're these big reptilian-looking, walk on all fours. I don't know. They're as big as a large elephant seal. Or
They also have
that.
mole features. They have
Yeah.
mole teeth and kind of
that's
mole
where
faces.
my thing comes from. But a lot more svelte and
Yeah.
they
they're very
work
svelte.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they
yeah.
take. You know what? They take care of themselves.
take care of
Because it's
themselves.
important that you feel good about yourself inside and out when
Yes.
you're a horrifying monster.
Yeah.
What was I going to say?
The
I don't
plot?
know, the plot. Yeah, the plot of Slaughterhouse Rulez. Yeah.
All right, so it's day one of the first day of school, and there's this new student.
Before that, though, we have a whole introduction of a family dynamic we return to once and then never again.
Oh, yes.
Well, it's important to tell you who our main character is. And what is,
but
what
even
is,
they set up this dad thing and the guilt of that and the urn thing, and they really drove that in that first scene.
Yeah, your
and
dad
the
has
mom
high
relationship.
Yeah, your dad has had high expectations.
And we
for you. He's
never
dead
heard
now.
about the dad again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because he's dead. I did like the fact when they wanted to take a family portrait with the urn, and the urn just says "Dad." On the outside.
I got that too.
was
That
a
was
in
nice
case
little
you're
joke,
not doing, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one guy, Don, it's his first day at school. His mom's enrolling him into this boarding school by force, by the looks of it, because he needs some proper structure and needs to meet some new friends.
Yeah, we don't even really find out what Don's whole deal is. If he's a problem kid.
Well,
who got,
the mom says
kicked
the thing
out
is
of
all you
school.
do is hang around and play video games.
He's
When
just-
this
he's just
other
directionless.
dick kid in the kitchen is
Yeah.
obviously the problem.
Yeah.
But through the whole movie, he seems like a love. I teach kids.
Yeah.
I would love to have him as a student. He seems smart,
No, he seems
resourceful.
he seems like a nice.
He seems
guy.
emotionally
Yeah.
available. He's empathetic. All these things. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's this classic dynamic where he comes to the school, and of course it's the British boarding school structure where everyone gets divided into houses, and of course he gets sorted into the loser house.
The Hufflepuffs of Slaughterhouse.
But of course, the Hufflepuffs of Slaughterhouse is a great subtitle for this. But of course, he is your standard good-looking main character of a movie and everything, where it's all he would easily fit in with
He's
the
a hard
popular-
Gryffindor.
the popular
Yeah.
guy. He's giving off major Gryffindor energy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's his first day at school. He's meeting his classmates, including one Blake Willoughby, or Will. Sometimes he goes by Will, sometimes he goes by Blake. It's very hard to keep track sometimes. Yeah, that's his roommate at this boarding school.
He's your classic edgy kid.
Yeah,
Your
he
classic
does
emo.
snuff.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how you know he's cool, because he has like this old-fashioned way of like doing.
But he also carries enough snuff to kill a monster. Like,
or at
as
least,
we learned.
at least blind a monster
Yeah.
at the very least. This is Asa Butterfield, who at one point in time was sort of like levied as like the next big kid actor. He was on the short list for a while to be Spider-Man before they went for Tom Holland. So, but yeah, he's your classic bad boy with a background.
Yeah. The background being that his former roommate, Seymour or whatever,
Who was a Viscount.
Yeah,
They
Viscount.
mentioned.
I like that they went with Viscounts
Yeah.
instead of like Duke or Earl.
Yeah.
Like it's the little known nobility.
Yeah. No, that kid committed suicide over the holiday break or what have you. And we get into the tragic backstory of what that entailed. But we got to get through the movie here.
we got to introduce the characters
Yeah.
first. Yeah.
So, I mean, how do we... There's so many fucking characters in
There's
this
a
movie.
lot
I
of
mean,
them.
all right,
and I don't remember any of their
ripping the
names.
Band-Aid off, Simon Pegg is like the housemaster of Sparta House.
Whose name appropriately is Meredith Houseman.
Meredith.
With his wife, girlfriend, partner,
Well,
Margot Robbie.
I think Audrey. I think he wants to think that she's his girlfriend. Audrey used to be the matron of the school, and we are led to believe that they had like a brief school romance. But Audrey has now gone off to do missionary work in some sort of African country.
Like
so
Doctors Without Borders stuff.
So Margot Robbie is in this movie, but she's confined solely to a computer screen. And she's in a handful of scenes.
Cameo.
And the joke there is that we keep thinking that she's going to break up with Simon Pegg, and then it keeps being like, of course I found someone else, and then she's referring to like a small African boy or something, and then there's like another doctor who's like whispering into her ear and then looking directly at the camera.
And she's like, oh, we go at it together all day.
Yeah,
and she
exactly.
actually means their work.
Yeah. So Simon Pegg is whipped hard, and he can't get over this school romance. He feels like this is the love of his life, and so it's just him drinking copiously and doing smoking weed. And
Simon Pegg plays losers quite well.
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's his raison d'etre, of course. Yeah. Also, Mr. Houseman seemingly is the only teacher at this school. Did anyone else pick up
there
on
was that like caretakery kind of
I
person.
love that actress. That actress was great.
The new matron, the one who replaced Margot Robbie, and I gotta say, like, not to say like the value of woman is in how they look, but what a fucking downgrade.
But she's also really playing it up. She's also playing the role like super weird.
Yeah,
like
I
she's
love
playing
that.
like
Drooling, and she's got this 5-yard stare, and
but
Like there's sort of like Renfield kind of energy.
a little bit.
Like,
She is sort of like the. We'll get to the headmaster in a second, but but truly, like there's like a brief scene where Simon Pegg also now has to, apart from being like the housemaster of Sparta House,
like the Latin teacher.
he also has to step in for the Latin teacher because he mentions the Latin
He
teachers.
just died alone and sad.
Which
is like
in
clearly
any,
what his fate could be.
But also in any other movie, how about that for the cold open? The Latin teacher got eaten by one of the monsters, but we don't know. It's just this character has just died off screen, and we don't know what the situation is.
Yeah.
But I don't think we see any other teacher teaching a class other than Simon Pegg.
It's just him.
It's just him doing everything.
But God, there's a lot of kids. There's so many kids, like background kids. Like they did
There's like
not.
4 other houses, and they're full of like 50 kids each or something. Yeah. I love the scenes where he is trying to teach class, and he's trying to joke and endear himself to the kids, and they're just like staring at him dead-eyed. And
on a Cerberus waiting to make a meal of me.
Ah, now, Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of Hades, makes life hell for the postman. Get on with it, Bartlett.
His
For
reaction
me, there was that classic Simon Pegg where he starts and the book is upside down and turns it up. I'm like, so this is the comedy that we're choosing for. Like, it was, it was the levels of comedy in this movie are like, okay.
Incidentally, this film was filmed at Stowe School near Buckingham, which is the actual
the actual school of
Crispian Mills that the director went to. Yeah, this building is incredible. Like, it makes total sense that when he was thinking of what movie am I going to make, of course he must have gotten the germ of saying like, of course, naturally, I'm going to set it here because like what a tremendous setting for any movie because this place is just incredible.
It's a beautiful building, and it's in a fantastic part of the countryside. Yeah, instant production values. This movie does look pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, so they have their first assembly, and they meet the headmaster, played by
Michael
Sheen.
Sheen, playing a character simply known as the Bat, who I guess the only reason we get for that is he has a big cloak. He has to wear
he
his
likes
head.
flapping his cloak.
Yeah, he wears his headmaster robes or whatever.
But his name is never established as like Battleby or something like that. Kids just
Battleby. That's what we're gonna call him from now on, though. I've
Battleby.
decided Battleby. Yes, BattleBot.
Anyways.
Michael Sheen is giving like 110% in
Yeah,
this movie.
he was delightful.
Oh yeah, he's great. He's
delightful
He's
headmaster.
a full Goofballs McGillicuddy performance.
He's
here.
so pompous, and he's
Yeah.
looking the other way on all the problems at the school, and he's very stuck up. And halfway through the movie, I thought to myself, man, I have to imagine this part was written with Matt Berry in mind.
Oh, he would have knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely.
That would have been incredible. Yeah.
Because he's like throwing a lot of English everywhere. And
I mean, any movie is improved by a little berry, a little squeeze of berry juice. But yeah, I'm getting some major Scudworth vibes from this headmaster here. He's just like the wacky principal who doesn't take anything seriously, and we find out very soon is deep in bed with the fracking people. He basically is the one that's
buddies with the CEO.
engineering this whole
Yes.
sort of shifty deal.
Because there's a lot of natural shale gas beneath Slaughterhouse. And
Selectively flammable shale.
yes, absolutely.
I did note while watching this movie, Jameson, we have begun and we have
Bookended our Halloween.
2 months of Halloween by having movies set in labyrinths that are filled with gas.
That's right.
So it's very weird that we ended up doing
What a
that
theme that we stumbled upon this year.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
A strange selection of Halloween movies that we've done this year for ourselves, yes. So yeah, they're split up into 4 houses. Andromeda, Xenophon, Olympus, and Sparta. And Andromeda is
The all-girl
The
house.
sexist house.
they're all girl house. Because I guess that's like a commentary in the sense that like boarding schools have always kind of traditionally been a division of the genders, and I guess as time has gone on, they've opened up the ideas like, all right, maybe girls can also come to this school, but they have to be in their own they have to stay in their own lane.
I mean, Michael Sheen is doing the whole thing where he is like, "Hello, gentlemen and ladies."
That's
after
a
he's
running
correct.
joke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's always corrected on that, so it's got to be a new thing. I love the establishing shots where they are introducing all the houses. That's a bit of a nod to how Edgar Wright would have done it, where there's like a flat shot of just everyone who would be in that house. You know, the jock house is holding their sign upside down.
Then
all the
whip
brainiacs are
pants.
playing chess and everything.
That's
Like,
a joke that they've done twice in this movie. Someone holding something upside down. You know what? It's a classic gag.
That's a classic gag.
I don't want to accuse Crispian Mills of stealing another director's style, but there are definitely some shots in this movie that are very Wright inspired.
The whole tone of the movie is
Yeah.
very Wright inspired.
Like there's a
in
shot
that.
that's like, I would say like one of Wright's like trademarks is there's just like this brief scene of a student slamming his body against a window to get the attention of the Asa Butterfield character. Yeah, and
that Shaun of the Dead
that's
moment.
right out of Shaun of the
For
Dead.
me, it was
Yeah.
for me, even when they're arming themselves, the kids,
Oh,
and they go through
that
this
was
part,
right out of the
like
Edgar
the
Wright.
whip
Oh,
bands
yeah.
and the exactly.
What I have no problem with. I think more directors should try to knock off Edgar Wright because he's
Sure,
fucking
yeah,
brilliant.
yeah.
He makes movies visually interesting to
And
watch.
as I mentioned at the top of this episode, this movie was produced by Pegg and Frost. Actually, their debut film production company, which is called Stolen Pictures. Hey, I didn't even realize the parallel there.
There you go.
There you go.
But they're stealing from themselves.
Remember-
so if you're going to steal from anyone,
Good artists borrow, great artists steal.
that was the idea behind it. I imagine. Yeah.
Just rattling off really quickly some of the other characters that we have in here. There's the object of Dawn's desire, a lady named Clumsy. Clumsy? Is that her name?
Clemsy
Clemsy?
Lawrence.
As in like Clementine or something? Is that her name? Clumsy?
Possibly.
And what was her like aristocratic title or something? Like she's
Well,
from somewhere. Like
I don't know, but like the heads of the school, they are referred to as gods and
yeah.
goddesses
Which
because
is really weird.
it is. Well, the houses.
Well, I mean,
but
the houses are
all like Greek mythology or
Yeah, I
whatever.
guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so she is literally a goddess
Yeah.
because she's like a 6th year or whatever. And in
Did you? I noticed this. Dawn's looking at the school brochure, and his mom's like,
Yes, that's a good line.
His mom's like, "Oh, there's plenty of like fun things to do there. There's the cadets, there's the sports, there's girls,
Yeah.
as in things to do."
That's a selling point.
And he turns the page, and I swear to God, that's Clemsy as like the model in the brochure.
be.
well, that I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so
yeah,
like,
yeah.
come to our school, and maybe you can meet this girl, and
Which is indeed what happens. She ends up his girlfriend.
though she seems to have a close relationship with this one character named Smudger.
I love British character names. It's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a PG Wodehouse.
Yeah.
Or Woodhouse.
And then we got Clegg, who is sort of the upper six. I don't know what you would call it, like the head boy at Slaughterhouse, and he's just an absolute dick.
Yeah.
He's irrepressible hard ass.
He is ostensibly like the actual villain of this,
this
movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of villains in this movie.
Yeah.
The
The establishment.
But he's like our human antagonist and our most overtly antagonistic, who actually wants to actively harm the other guys. Here's a question I want to ask you guys. Is this a public or a private school?
Okay,
Because
curious that you say that because it's definitely a private school.
Right.
Like the mom describes it, but then Nick Frost's character, who went to that school, describes it in the movie as a public school.
Yeah.
That was a weird thing for me.
Clegg mentions a couple times that his family are super legacy members of this, who like 5 generations have gone to the school, and he's really singling out Don because he's just like a public guy who paid his way in to get into this school. And I'm like, well, that's
how everyone
that's how
gets into
these
the
private
school,
schools work, but you're upset of him of just being like a public figure and not like a legacy guy. It's really hard to digest, I think.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that until you brought it up.
I read an article, maybe it was a Wikipedia. I like when I start sentences like that. I read an article, a very scholarly thing.
Yeah.
I read an article.
I'm pretty sure it was
I
just
heard it.
I looked at Wikipedia. I heard it from a friend.
But Crispin Mills, because he went to public and private schools, and it was that idea of like, I'm too posh for public school, I'm not good enough for private, and that sort of dichotomy. So like the script kind of reads that, but it's
So he might have
muddy.
just blended the two together without realizing that he needed
Or
to
the
make
script
a stronger...
supervisor was just not paying attention that day. Where it's like, did he say public or private? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think over the course of this episode, I might have called it a public school and a private school. So it's I don't know. It's hard to tell.
You know what? The movie does both, so you can have your cake
Well,
and eat it,
I'm
too.
curious now. Is there like a structural hierarchy in the UK of like? Is there differences? Like, are they semi-funded? Does that make it a public or a
I don't know. I think, but like the thing about like public schools in Britain is you still have to wear uniforms. There's still like some sort of like structure involved in them. So I don't know. I've never surprisingly I've never gone to school in the UK, so I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
I'm
know
just
that.
gonna go on a limb. If it's an estate out in like the country and you go home for
I
like
think it's
weekends and
pretty
stuff, like that's
definitively
private.
that's
That
private
sounds like a
school. It's a
private
boarding
thing.
school, yeah. Anyways, glad we got that sorted out of the way.
But it is the private school is Slaughterhouse. It is named after the Earl of Slaughter,
which is a real place. The
Yep.
district of Slaughter. Or wherever.
Yep, and we found out that at some point in time he slayed some sort of mythical beast, and the school has like a motto, and they've built the mythology around all of this here.
I love when they were quizzing that one kid about what's the school motto, and he's just like, give us your cash.
Again, private school.
Yeah, there you go. What the fuck happens? During one of their morning runs, Don and Blake, they decide that they're going to veer off and make a shortcut through the woods just to get away from them. They come across the fracking hole. They alert the security guys who are watching the fracking hole. And as they're running away, they set the lake on fire because a lot of methane gas.
Well, because Clegg is like throwing grenades at them or something, and then
firecrackers.
Someone throws their cigarette into the water, and it turns out that the water, of course, is completely contaminated from all the fracking. So like it just sets the entire body of water on fire.
And they get called out for that, and their punishment is you can't go home on holiday weekend because it's already the fucking holiday weekend.
They're not allowed to get their butterbeer from the village.
It just feels to me like a day has gone by, and already they're ready for like go home for the weekend. You're on holiday weekend.
Yeah, well, it's that thing where it's like an indeterminate amount of time. I mean, that's we keep referencing this because as North Americans, our only frame of reference for British private schools is the Harry Potter series. But yeah, I mean, there are like a lot of parallels. I mean, that's a complaint you can levy towards the Harry Potter movies as well as they never have a great sense of how much time has passed.
But you can see the seasons change in
yes,
the Harry
you can.
Potter movies.
Yeah, I mean, like whatever. Like we're led to believe this is like the first month that Dawn is at school.
Yeah, and he hates it. He can't crack it, and
but also as they're running away from the fracking hole, they run across a bunch of hippies in the woods, and this is where we're introduced to Nick Frost's character, who is Woody Chapman, who is like this anti-fracking activist, and he's, of course, being Nick Frost, he's also a drug dealer.
Ex-Slaughterhouse students.
Yes. And we find out the history is that him and Michael Sheen went to school at the same time, and they were roommates, and Nick Frost and his brother did something in the basement of Slaughterhouse, and there's his brother disappeared in the catacombs below Slaughterhouse, and it became like this big urban legend or whatever. And of course,
kid buried in the school.
And let's point out the catacombs that no one has ever explored in the
couple centuries,
700. I don't know. As a person who works at a school, you're always looking for storage for shit. And, like, it's going to be full of boxes.
That's why
all the old desks
they
and everything.
would have found the monsters.
That's why there's no teachers at this school, because someone's putting all, like, the extra chairs away or looking for chalk, and then
they never come back.
And they just get eaten, and no one has ever...
Yeah.
No, and Michael Sheen isn't complaining about it because it's less people he has to pay.
Yeah.
So, I imagine, I just like to imagine the idea behind this is Simon Pegg is just running around to each of the classrooms and just teaching.
Sorry, I'm late.
That Friends episode with the rollerblades.
Can't we all just have all of our classes in one room so I don't have to go anywhere?
Like an old-timey schoolhouse.
Yeah. I did appreciate the one scene where Simon Pegg and Nick Frost get together where, like, he asked to borrow a light or something, or he says, like, hey, good job keeping the grass cut there, Nick Frost. And then he calls him a fascist, and that's a wrap on iconic comedy screen duo.
Yeah. It's like they did realize as the producers of this movie, we probably need to have at least one scene where we're in the same frame together. It is kind of a confusing scene because I think Simon Pegg is smoking a joint, and I think he's either just smoking his regular cigarette or he's smoking a joint and he doesn't want anyone to catch him. And then he's sort of like smoking behind the shed and he's watching the rugby match. And then he accidentally backs into Nick Frost and his buddy who are standing there. And he says a line that's like, excellent grass. And then he refers to like the pitch on the rugby field. You boys did an excellent job. And so I was very confused by this interaction. It's all like, is he buying drugs from Nick Frost because he's depressed that his girlfriend moved away or whatever? Or is Nick Frost like the caretaker of this school?
Which he hates.
Which he hates. I couldn't make heads or tails of this. This movie doesn't really describe these characters' relationship enough. So I didn't get this
to have a relationship at all.
Given the amount of time we've spent... Like, because we're the 6-hour mark at this point.
It just gets longer and longer.
There's so much exposition.
It's a miniseries.
That is, I'd say this would make a better series.
Yeah,
sure.
Yes.
Well, then we just get Wednesday again.
Yeah,
this is basically just the plot of Wednesday, but without actual monsters. So we find out a little bit more about Dawn's roommate. We eventually do find out. The writing is on the wall early on, but
we keep seeing these nooses made out of neckties that are scattered around the school. It's sort of like a forbidden topic to be discussed. And it's revealed through, what's her name, Clumsy? She tells Dawn...
It is now.
She tells Dawn that, that Vincent guy, he was caught with his boyfriend by Clegg, who's a massive homophobe, and I guess, like...
And then the parents found out
about it, and that's what caused Vincent to kill himself. And it's revealed to us that was Will's...
Willoughby, because they didn't really need to reveal anything, because as soon as they say he was caught making out with another boy, you immediately know what character they're
but then it's weird, it's like, but then later when he's like, it was you, like, there's that weird sort of, like, recognition there.
Dawn puts it together himself very quickly through a lot of, like, flashback to what other characters say.
Again, a very Edgar Wright type of thing to do.
Right, but none of the dialogue really pointed out that it was Will who was the boyfriend.
Though, if you look at the collage they has, you see a little Oscar Wilde in there. And, like, there's, like, little things that they did in terms of that.
Yeah, and also just the way that Asa Butterfield is giving this.
Well, I mean, if we're starting micro and then moving to the macro of basically the, like, shot on them while they're having the conversation.
But it's revealed that Willoughby is the one who's leaving these ties around, and initially it's sort of introduced as like, oh, he's like this edgy kid who's like trying to like
rock the establishment.
Exactly, rock the establishment. But it's later you sort of like come to the realization, oh no, he's doing this as a protest because no one cares that the boy he had a crush on hung himself, so he's now sort of doing this as like a protest, and it's all like you all want to sweep this under the rug, but I'm not going to let you forget about it. No. He's doing it kind of in an edgy way, but you know
he's left with no other option.
Exactly, yeah. And then Don puts this all together, and then he gets this amazing sixth sense that lets him know that Willoughby is about to hang himself in his dorm room at this exact moment. So he runs up the stairs and prevents that from happening. And look, let's get into this. This really is the part of this movie that I think works the least amount, because it is such a serious subject to bring up as sort of a minor plot point in this.
Oh, the most minor of
very
plot points.
This very silly movie about big giant monsters.
They almost brush it under the carpet the minute that there's a part where after he's saved from killing himself, Don finds the suicide note in an envelope.
Yeah.
But before he can open it, Will snatches away from him, and then he tears it up. And I'm like, that's pretty fucking heavy. Like, who knows what he wanted to say, and now he can't get it out. You know, he's been found out, and like whatever he needed to expose, he's taking that option off the table now.
And then they sort of laugh it off as a joke immediately, because he also bequeathed him his jeweled snuff box in his suicide.
What am I going to do with that? And
Yeah,
it's like, Jesus,
it's all
man.
like, it's kind of too serious a subject to be in a goofy comedy, and as you say, it's swept under the rug pretty quickly, and it's like, no, if you introduce something like that, you have to unpack it a little bit, because it's just, and it's dealing with the larger, more serious subject of homophobia in institutions like private schools. And obviously, like, the character of Clegg is meant to be like this irredeemable psychopath. So like nothing he says, and like, you know, he throws some hard F words around at Will, and it's very unpleasant, but it's sort of like played off as like, well, but this is the bad guy. We're not supposed to relate to him.
Well, what's interesting, because this is the peak of episode 4 in the series. But if the monsters never came and we just followed this as like a drama that sort of followed these like kids and what it's like to be in a private school, that makes sense. And usually I'm a big fan of like, if you have a really good story and then add a supernatural element or something,
it works.
That's going to comment it. Like, this is one of those exceptions where like, no, they're like really trying to dive into all of that stuff. The monsters are so inconsequential, but it just takes away in a huge degree.
There's so much build-up towards the first monster appearance and attacks that, like, you could probably fill out some of this runtime by actually unpacking this moment.
Yeah.
And,
or just don't introduce it as a plot element
or
at all,
that.
because
or save it for season 2. Save it for
season 2.
Yeah, this did get a full series pickup from
anyways, the
I want to say Crackle.
Yeah, QB, one of the failed streaming services. So the fracking guys, they go a bit too far, and they hit pay dirt, and now like there's a massive earthquake, and it causes a blackout at Slaughterhouse. And this is all taking place over the holiday weekend, so there's only like a small handful of kids actually left.
All the people who were not allowed to go back home for the holidays. Yes, as you say. Yes, no, they're not allowed their butterbeer. Yes.
Yeah.
This is when Dawn, Will, Clumsy, and her friend, they decide to go investigate into the woods, where that's when they find the monster, and the monster attacks Clumsy.
Yes, and as Erik has said, continually goes like this is a very overlong movie. This is 57 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
This is almost an hour before we get our first monster on screen of anything.
That's not like a tapestry or a wall painting of like something that looks like a dragon and nothing like what we see.
Yeah. But the monsters come up and they decimate all of the fracking people, the asshole fracking people who we've seen like a couple of times looking at the machine that goes around and beep beep beep, and it's like someone's in there.
What's with the rate? Why would a fracking thing need a radar of like a whole like? Aren't we just taking shit out of the ground?
It's just gas.
Is
it's
anything
gas in the hole. Yeah.
Is anything moving down there that they have to worry about? There's a couple crickets in the
reading
mole.
some bogeys down in the underground.
It is.
It's
Like the screen in Alien where the red dot is getting closer to the thing, but all of them are just all like, it's fine. It's probably worms.
I just don't understand how that whole operation worked. Why there needed to be, I get why you'd need so many people to excavate and stuff, but the security people, I didn't really get that.
You're not expecting to find anything down there, so they really didn't need a radar.
And there's those big Jurassic Park gates, sort of and it was the pounding and stuff. I was like, oh, okay.
And it's also weird that they hired all these security people to guard essentially nothing, because every time we look at the fracking tower, it's the most obvious CGI fracking tower I've ever seen. They did not build that for that movie.
Yeah. I don't know what a fracking tower looks like, but I can't imagine it's 40-story tall skyscraper.
It looks like Sauron design.
It does. Yeah.
It's right out of Mordor.
It's just a little bit of social commentary there, I imagine. But so they do that, and they also plow through Nick Frost's camp of hippies in the woods. He largely survives it because he is tripping balls on mushrooms in his tent, and I think everyone, I think he's able to escape the monsters until he shows up again near the end of the movie. But now finally the plot has begun.
The movies.
Now the movie's a lot of fun.
Now that the original series is over, they've done the reboots.
That's right.
We finally see the monsters.
Yeah, it's chapter 2, which I'm going to say is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And yet the build-up that we have on all these characters don't really inform too much. There were 2 kids who are sort of
the nerds.
The nerds who are sprinkled throughout the early parts of the movie, who aren't really characters, and I didn't even know if they had names. Yeah, but they're the dorks, and they're spending the evening playing Dungeons and Dragons, just 1v1, which is not a game you play 1v1
D&D with the dick DM. You got to roll a 20.
You got to roll a perfect 20.
I got to say, as soon as that kid rolled a 20, I was like, oh, this kid's gonna end up being the fucking action hero badass, and I'm here for it. And then he does fucking nothing.
Yeah,
there's the running joke of this one little kid character is that he has to memorize the school motto or whatever, and he keeps getting tested by Clegg and the older boys, and every time we see him, he's in some sort of humiliation. There's quite a funny scene where he's introduced to Dawn, where they're just all you don't want to be like that kid. Which kid? And then he just we see he's tied to the bottom of a sink, and he's
handcuffed to the sink in his underwear.
And Dawn pokes his head, and he just very casually goes hello.
Yeah.
that's the end of that character. And then later we see him in his underwear covered in feathers, and he's walking by. He's like, how's it going? You passed that test yet? And he's like, what do you think? Yeah. So there's some jokes. There's some fun. There's some stuff that's happening in this.
At the poor expense of this kid.
But they run back. They try to tell Michael Sheen that there are monsters coming out of the hole. At this point, Simon Pegg has drunk himself to sleep, so he's crashed out on a couch somewhere upstairs. He will join the party momentarily.
Yeah, but he's kind of out of the movie for a good 50,
20 minutes
something
or so.
Like that.
Yeah.
To the point where when I do see him again, I'm like, oh, Simon Pegg, you're right. You're
all
here.
right. This is the subject of this episode. Right, he's in this movie. Yeah,
but that leaves Clegg in charge of the house, and he's like, nobody leaves campus. And then when he finds out that the 2 guys have left already, he's putting on the war paint and he's dressed in his fatigue.
He also finds Willoughby's stash of tie nooses.
Yeah.
Which I don't know why he needed that many. I guess he was planning something big. He just you get the idea that he has been leaving individual ones around, but the next step is the elevation of that. He's probably gonna leave 30 of them in the hallway or whatever.
Well, it was that curious thing, because some people you can't tie a necktie, so you gotta just go around and people be like, could you just tie this for me?
And
Right. You got to practice. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we missed the scene of him watching the YouTube tutorial which is how
practicing in the mirror.
Which is how I have to tie my tie.
You know what? As much as Clegg is a despicable character, when he goes to investigate to see if they're in their room or not, the way he breaks down that door, that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
That flying kick he gives to it, that's pretty rad.
There's this little touch, and I don't know if this was intentional or not, but the introduction of Willoughby, we see him in his room doing various edgy emo type things, and one of the things he does is it a crossbow? I don't know. He either throws a dart at something, but he specifically throws a dart at a picture of Malcolm McDowell, from young Malcolm McDowell from his early days. The actor they got to play Clegg really resembles Malcolm McDowell. I don't know if that was like intentional or not, but of course Malcolm McDowell starred in a classic British boarding school Gone to Hell movie. I believe it was called If. So that might have something to do with that. That's maybe like a little
nod,
a little Easter egg or something along that nature. But
they're in Michael Sheen's office and they're trying to say you got to call the police on this, and he's like, I won't have it. You kids aren't going anywhere. And then the monsters crash through his office, and we get a good look at the nice combination of practical and digital effects, CGI effects.
They definitely made some practical monsters in this. Yep, for sure. And the creepy matron is the first one to get eaten. And then they
try to get away in this car, and which is in a scene that's right out of something Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright came in to guest direct this scene.
This is, I think, maybe the best overall joke in the movie when they're trying to get away and they're trying to get Michael Sheen to drive the car, and he goes, "I'm going as fast as I can," and then he's putting on his driving gloves. That's maybe the best joke in the movie. That was really funny. Where he's just very so. It's like, I must put my seatbelt on, and the things in the background.
Seatbelts, everyone.
And then he reverses, and we hear a thump, and we are led to believe that he has run over his best friend and Mr. Chips. And Willoughby says goodbye, Mr. Chips, which is of course yet another boarding school film reference.
Is it?
Yes. There was a movie called Goodbye, Mr. Chips, in which a headmaster touched the hearts and minds of young boys. It's from the 30s.
Oh, wow, what a deep cut.
Yeah, exactly. I know some stuff.
So Michael Sheen goes to investigate, and then he gets his head bitten off.
He's very dead.
Yeah, very dead.
He's as dead as you can get in these things.
But it was a good Michael Sheen head. The one that ends up on the hood. I was like, nice job.
Yeah.
This monster reveal, it's a good reveal, but he kind of seems to teleport.
I'm glad that we just got the show and tell from the art department, because they worked hard on that. You can tell. Yeah.
Yeah, so the kids drive away. They kill a monster by driving it through a window, but just as they're making their escape, Clumsy says, no, we got to go back for Smudger, who's going through his upper six initiation orgy thing. And she drops that Smudger's actually her brother, not her boyfriend. And
this is a very good reaction from Finn Cole in this moment here too, where he's all like, "He's your brother."
Your brother. Oh, then we gotta go after him.
Did you Smudger's her brother? We gotta go back for her brother. He says brother 10 times. It's all like that. It is quite funny.
I have to go back. The Smudger, I can't leave him. He's my brother.
Smudger? He's your brother?
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, we gotta go back for your brother.
Do we though? Thank you, Don.
Clumsy, he's your brother. Alright, we can't leave your brother behind, can we? Come on, guys, we can do this.
We are all going to die.
In earlier scenes,
this is how he makes inroads with the girl he likes.
There's brief moments where we see Smudger and Clumsy in earlier scenes, and we see Dawn is looking at them out of jealousy or whatnot. But yes, it's the sort of thing where again, they're borrowing from Edgar Wright, where they're showing one thing, and then when we find out the context of it, it's more familial than it is.
Oh, thank God.
Romantic, and it is funny. Yeah, and so let's talk about the fact that all of the upper terms are having a Roman-themed orgy.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
these aren't still children.
I mean, Stephen King did it.
He should not have.
Oh, no, he totally should not have. But
he was also on all the cocaine when he wrote that.
If more than one horror franchise does it, does that make it a trope now?
Yeah, it makes it an homage.
Horror orgy.
Yeah, horror orgy.
A horgy.
A horgy.
As we call it
in the business.
Yes.
So they got to go, and then Smudger is going through this initiation, so he's tied up as a sacrifice or some sort.
He's getting whipped while getting a hand job from another dude.
So apparently homophobia is not the biggest thing at this school. I don't know. It was.
It's not. Yeah. It's not gay if you're wearing a toga, though.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If it's all part of
that's
it.
how the Romans did it.
I mean, the idea is that these are all the students of privilege who are attending this, and it's like the commentary.
I'm sorry, was the Viscount not privileged?
Well, but he was secretly gay, so we must show. We must shun
there's
him.
there's
Yes.
like gay for the initiation orgy, and then there's like actual gay.
Okay.
This
And he was
one
also-
is frowned upon, and one is part of.
And he was also like a first termer, so he didn't have any stake
No
in
clout.
anything. Yeah, exactly. He had to go through the.
You
muck
gotta
to
earn your
get
gay
that.
It's not like it was
Yeah.
an Earl or anything.
No, indeed. Yeah, no, we're not talking Earl levels here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the commentary here is that like these are the assholes who are going to go and run the country or whatever. So it's no big loss when the monsters show up and they plow through all of these orgying teens. So they rescue Smudger. Dawn briefly gets tied up and seems like horrible things are going to happen to him, and then Clegg shows up and says like, I found your tie stash, I'm gonna fuck your face, boy. Gets a little crazy.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
So Simon Pegg meets up with the guys. He just happens to know where they are.
Well, he wakes up and the Sparta house is completely deserted, and he's got like a raging hangover. And he puts on pants eventually, but there is a couple of shots of him wandering through the halls with no pants on.
It's boxer shorts and like Wellington boots.
Yes.
It's a real Jim Leahy look to him.
And then he meets up with our motley crew of misfits and whatnot, and he at first he doesn't believe them, but then an actual Monstar starts charging at him. For some reason, he's holding a spear at this moment, and he gets to be a big hero, and he gets to slay the beast, much like the Earl of Slaughter did in the original tapestry or whatever we're led to see here.
Yeah.
Sans Terrier, yes. Although Mr. Chips is still alive, and he survives this movie.
The dog does not die.
The dog seemingly has the biggest body count of anyone in this movie, because he's running around like knocking off monsters just on his own.
Oh, he's eaten like the body parts of all the slain people.
I still
and the
think
monsters.
my theory of it's the same dog.
It wouldn't be the most insane thing that happens in this movie.
No.
He's the immortal hellhound from. I would have loved that fucking twist. Simon Pegg leads the kids towards the school armory, because I guess this board school has like a bunch of cadets with like.
But we saw it in the brochure.
Yeah. I have to imagine they don't use real live rounds. I get maybe they do for like skeet shooting or target practice, but I don't know. I find it a little odd that they would have like an actual armament.
Seems like a good idea.
Yeah,
Seems like
it's good for like these kinds of horror movies, but
I mean, like I say that ironically, but it turned out to be a good idea at the time because and this is why we need to arm all teachers, because we need to know that at any point in time, a big ass monster.
Yeah, the only thing to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
I'm realizing as I'm saying this maybe isn't the best thing to joke about.
No.
Veer off that road. All right, cool. Yeah.
So Simon Pegg is like sort of the de facto leader of this group somehow, because he's barking instructions to the kids. There's a really funny bit where he's like, "And you toss me that bat," and he just gets whacked in the face with it.
Again, a very right
comedy.
style comedy thing, but and then like everything we've seen from Simon Pegg up until this point, we do get the vibe that on at least some level
he's a good person.
Yeah, there's like a streak of humanity in him, and this is where the subtext becomes text when a character literally says to him, "You're a good guy."
You're a good man, sir, you know that.
Thanks.
But then Clegg shows up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's completely snapped, and he's not there to help anyone. He's there to kill them all, including Simon Pegg.
He's distracted when Margot Robbie calls up Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
And that allows Don to get the drop on Clegg, and then one of the nerd kids points a BB gun or something at his head and says, He says, "This is Sparta," and I was like, there it is.
Yeah. Oh, you knew that was coming.
Oh, yeah.
This is Sparta.
And that's just enough to get Clegg towards a window so a monster can come by and rip his arms off.
2 monsters, I think.
Oh, yeah.
A monster for each arm, I believe. And, and Clegg gets what's coming to him. And Mr. Houseman, being the aforementioned decent person, tries to save him, but it doesn't quite work, and he also gets chomped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're jumping to the end here and spoiling this, but I didn't buy in this moment that Simon Pegg was truly dead. Something about this yanked off into the woods. I mean, like it's like the classic horror movie trope of like, if you don't see a body, then the character's not fully dead. I didn't fully buy this, and of course there is a post-credit scene to show that he survived. How, I have no idea. One has to assume Mr. Chips was involved in some way.
Yeah.
But this all happened off screen, so we can only fill in the blanks ourselves.
Can I just point out that in this survivor group, there are 7 people.
There's a lot of this group, and,
That's
they all survive.
That's the thing. I was saying a couple of episodes ago, I would like to see a horror movie where the people in that survivor group actually work together and defeat the evil, and no one dies.
There you go.
And yeah, I got my wish. I kind of just wish there was like a little bit more.
Be careful what you wish for.
A little more characterization to some of these.
Some of them could have made. We could have lost Smudger.
Could have lost
It's
Smudger.
probably.
He was the most expendable.
He was the most expendable.
Who was
out
the
of
kid
all
who
of them.
lost the hand in the orgy? Were they a character that was ever established?
I don't. Maybe.
Yeah. I think they were just one of the nameless. Other bad kids.
Either Smudger or other nerd boy. Could have bitten it. In my opinion.
I thought Clumsy's girlfriend there, she could have.
Sure. I mean, she's barely a character anyway. I mean, like she's a nice, sweet little kid. So you don't want any of these children to get eaten.
All the people in that survivor group, with the exception of Smudger, we've seen are like actually likable people.
Yeah.
And I thought there's no goddamn way they're going to kill those 2 youngest members of the crew. So that just leaves Dawn and Willoughby as like the potential guys who are going to die.
I would say out of everyone who gets eaten by the monsters, there's kind of only one death that's like truly sympathetic. And that's Nick Frost. Which we are getting to.
Yeah.
Everyone else who gets eaten kind of had it coming.
Yeah. But I still agree. This fellowship could have used a Faramir. Yeah.
Or
a Boromir.
Faramir was never part of the fellowship.
No, Boromir.
So they escape to the catacombs, the gas-filled catacombs under the school, where they do meet up
with their
Nick
glow
Frost.
sticks. It's
with
important
glow
they
sticks.
have glow sticks.
Yes,
well, otherwise we as an audience wouldn't be able to see what was going on.
well, but also to our climactic ending, it's important that they have glow sticks.
It is important that we have glow sticks. We watched a movie earlier this year called Minotaur. That movie could have used some fucking glow sticks because we cannot tell what was going on in that movie for the most part. But they meet Nick Frost in the catacombs, and he's still off his mind on mushrooms because he's a character played by Nick Frost.
Yep.
So that's half of the roles that he plays.
Yeah. What is he? He drops that like his original plan. Him and his brother's original plan was to blow up the school by just igniting the shale gas that was underneath.
Methane.
The methane gas. Yeah. And then a monster comes by and he gets eaten by it.
Well, but there's like this big build-up where Nick Frost is all like, maybe this one's okay. Maybe if I shine a light in his face, maybe he won't go. And he goes over and he starts petting the monster. And I'm just like, don't do that.
Yeah.
We know what's coming next. And of course, yes, these are not friendly creatures, as we say. So yeah, there's a great fake out where he gets like pulled away from the monster and they pull him back, but he got no legs.
Yep.
He just a torso now.
Yeah.
And there's actually quite a legitimately kind of like sad moment where right before he passes away, he sees his younger brother, and he's like, "I'm coming, Dougie," or whoever it was.
His name was, yeah.
And then in his final breaths, he gives them a hint on how to escape because he escaped last time. So they figure out a way to get out of the gas. What was it? He says like follow something or other.
Follow the light, I guess.
Follow the light or
follow
the gas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because they've also established early on, because Willoughby has this lighter that he got as a gift from his boyfriend.
He bequeathed it, yeah.
From the Viscount that
you're not letting that one go, eh?
Well, I don't know his name. All I know is his title.
That's
exactly.
He's all titles, this guy.
The Count.
The lighter had an S on it.
Seymour.
Seymour.
Yeah.
Viscount Seymour.
Viscount.
And suddenly he's Seymour.
Last name Butts. The flame turns green.
Yeah.
This is yet another movie where I don't know if the screenwriters know how gas works.
Yeah, like they would have all asphyxiated in those tunnels.
Absolutely. They would have passed out immediately.
Yeah.
But also they're like sometimes the gas is flammable, other times it just changes the color of the flame.
Yeah.
It's that's not how gas, they would explode every time.
It's just a really cool butane lighter, right?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, you used to be able to get those lighters that had like different
colored flames.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's just what it is. Mm-hmm. But no, that's how they figure out how to...
those things are fucking expensive,
they
don't last very long.
No, they don't. You use them twice.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, well, that was cool.
Yeah.
So they're running through the catacombs. They find like the big hive where all the monsters are at, and one is blocking their way to the exit, but Willoughby means to sacrifice himself because he grabs his tie, which apparently can survive a monster bite.
Yeah.
Like, it's not tearing or anything.
If there's one thing he knows, it's ties.
Yeah.
If there's one thing he knows, it's the structural integrity of ties.
Yeah, they can support a body. They can
yeah.
support the clamping jaw strength of these monsters.
And this was just like the briefest of moments where I'm just all like, oh, are they having the suicidal character sacrifice himself on behalf of everyone? I am glad that Don goes back and rescues his friend.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad that they're doing that because, that is yet another element that this movie doesn't need.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, Willoughby's a hero, and then he allows everyone to escape, and then Don manages to
go back
and get his friend out, and then they blow up all the monsters because now the gas is flammable.
Yeah, the gas is now flammable.
Yes.
What does he say? Like, bequeath this, motherfuckers.
Something
and then,
like that, yeah.
There's very little you can probably say in that kind of scenario.
But he also, because we see the flame green for a moment as he demonstrates outside the cave, and then he, a foot away, apparently the gas is flammable.
Yeah, they get a good couple of yards away from that sewer before it actually goes up.
Yeah, and then Slaughterhouse blows up, and the characters walk away in slow motion.
They're all embracing at the end.
And Tick Tick Boom starts playing.
How appropriate.
And we get some kind of stylized, cool ending credits that are kind of choreographed to the music, and it was just in a somewhat underwhelming movie. I always appreciate when they put effort into the closing credits, especially when they're animated.
It's a nice touch.
It's not too. They don't break the bank with them or anything, but they put some detail into them. So I will shout these out, and then we get the briefest of mid-credit scenes that show that Simon Pegg has survived. And even though his final words were, "Go children, save yourselves," when he realizes the children have abandoned them, he calls them all little shits. Ha ha ha. And that's our movie.
Yes, it is.
Was there anything that happened in the movie that we didn't mention that we wanted to spotlight here? Any lines of dialogue, any moments that happen here?
I'm looking at this.
Nick Frost has a funny line when he's talking to the kids about the dangers of fracking. He says it's a supermassive frack hole. So if anyone who's a fan of the band Muse, that is a reference to the band Muse. Again, a very Edgar Wright joke, making fun of British pop from the early 2000s.
I appreciated that a grouping of these creatures are called a frack. They established that.
Yeah. They established that in movie.
Yeah, but they never established what they're going to call these monsters.
No, but we know it's a frack of
the
them.
group of them is called a frack. Yeah. A frack of monsters.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Jim. They really should have given some name to these monsters.
Also, I was a little sad that in the legend it was a monster, but we have a whole bunch of monsters in the reality. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like the telephone game. Like one person tells a story, and then as time goes on, because also in the tapestry, it's like literally a dragon that we see him fighting.
Yeah.
So the myth has gotten diluted as time has gone on here. Evolved.
I found something I wanted to talk about. All right, so when the two nerds are playing Dungeons and Dragons and lamenting the fact that it'll be years before we can go to one of those upper six orgies, and one guy says oh, you think you're going to be invited to one of those things, and the youngest kid says, "I'd be perfect sex god material." Which is, and then I remember thinking such things when I was in 7th grade.
And then I think that character also later says "What's an orgy?"
Yeah.
He doesn't actually know that. I don't know. Good lines in this movie.
Yeah.
British
witticisms.
Slaughterhouse Rules. Erik, Jameson, does this movie have a certain something, or is it a whole lot of nothing?
I'm gonna say there's a glimmer of something in this.
Yeah.
I'm going to say a glimmer of something. It tries to be too many things.
Yeah, I agree. I think of all the Halloween movies that we've covered this year, this one might just be my favorite because of that very strong second half of the movie. After the first hour, kind of meandering a bit out of a few smattering of good lines. But once the actual horror stuff happens, I think it's all well done, all well shot. I like the buildup of tension, even though I don't really care for the characters that much. But I'd say there's a little bit of magic, which I think largely could be attributed to just Simon Pegg and Nick Frost kind of knowing what goes into making these really good genre pieces.
I mean, we've said it multiple times in this episode, but the glimmer of something that this movie has does feel like some residual Edgar Wright runoff. No shade towards Crispian Mills, who I imagine is still a filmmaker who's still trying to find his feet, but this very much feels like him copying someone else's style. And I don't know how much of that lot is influenced by the producers and stars of the movie that he was working with, trying to bring that Edgar Wright energy. But like this does very much feel like a lesser version of a better movie that you've definitely seen a couple of times.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to stick through kind of a boring first half, there's some decent monster stuff that happens in the second half. It's not entirely unenjoyable. But, you know, as you said, Eric, the first time you watched this was very much a laundry movie in the background. I think it remains that overall. Fantastic. Eric Gow, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. Thank you for
a pleasure.
hanging out with us.
For lending us your time and your talents.
No, this was such a treat for me. Thank you.
Now, this is a question that may reveal me as somewhat of a dullard, but we are in Canada here.
That hadn't already been established.
You are not currently a member of SAG-AFTRA, are you?
I am.
You are, so you...
Oh, no, not SAG-AFTRA. No. UBCP-ACTRA.
UBCP, okay.
Yeah.
So you, technically, you can pump things that you want people to check out. So you have any upcoming gigs that you might like to...
Yeah. I mean, it comes out tomorrow, but check out the thrilling conclusion of season 10 of When Calls the Heart.
Oh, yes.
That's
a Vancouver staple.
A Vancouver staple. That's otherwise, I don't know if you're local in Vancouver. If you're a teenager who really likes video and film and all of those things, Arts Umbrella has a half-day program where you go to school half the day and you can study film and acting or videography, things like that, over at Arts Umbrella. So if you're one of the younger viewers and you're like, I like this movie stuff, check it out. Arts Umbrella. Also just a great organization if you're ever interested in like donating or want to give back to kids and you like art. Arts Umbrella.
Yeah.
Gravel Island.
Andy Toth, great guy.
Andy Toth, great guy.
Fantastic. All right, well, Jameson.
Yeah.
That wraps up another 2 months of Halloween.
We did it. Another one in the bank.
No, we did. And we did very interesting bookended movies.
Yep, totally planned. Totally
absolutely. That was exactly how we planned it. But that was Slaughterhouse Rulez. I nearly forgot. I wanted to throw this in at the end because we are talking about horror movies. I wanted to throw in right at the very end here a quick little R.I.P. This week, we actually saw the passing of two minor horror filmmakers who nonetheless both have somewhat of a cult following, even though they never quite reached the levels of like your Carpenters or your Cravens or whatnot. But I did note that both of them passed away this week, sadly. So R.I.P. to Anthony Hickox, who directed Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, but also directed the excellent franchise Waxwork, which is a very interesting sort of comedy horror franchise that deals a lot with like time travel and whatnot. Definitely someone who had a bit of a cult following. And also R.I.P. Jameson, we just talked about him. Jeff Burr, the director of From a Whisper to a Scream, passed away a few days ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like very unfortunate timing there. Yeah. But so just like an honor to all of those lesser known horror filmmakers who are out there who are building their core audience and who have like a cult following, so check out some of those films. Definitely watch the Waxwork movies. Those are really interesting stuff.
The other night I was talking to someone about, the podcast, and they said, what kind of movies have you covered this Halloween? And I mentioned From a Whisper to a Scream, and they were like, oh shit, I've seen that. Yeah. And I was like, you have?
People have seen that and stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, so there. R.I.P. to those gentlemen. And that was Slaughterhouse Rulez, directed by Crispian Mills. If you like this episode, please. What?
I don't know. It just sounds like a breakfast cereal.
It is. It's a very posh
part of this
sort
complete
of
breakfast.
Crispian Mills does sound like someone who attended a private school. So yeah, that checks out. And also is kind of a nepo baby. Anyway, since I've just shit talked him, if you enjoyed this episode and you would like to hear more, please listen to our back catalog episodes.
Just check out our back catalog.
Just listen to more.
Yeah.
We got it. We got over 100 of these fuckers somehow. Yes, if you're listening to this on Spotify and you want some visuals to go along with this, head on over to our YouTube page. If you're listening to this on YouTube, you're already there. You're already doing it. You already love it.
But why not check out the Spotify?
But check out the Spotify at all if you want to. If for on the go, if you're in the car and you need your eyes for other things, we'd like to thank Joel Flynn and Luke Schuss and everyone at Podstream Studios for letting us use their equipment. Join us for our next episode where we will be out of the spooky stuff and we will be back to normal. I never know how to end this shit. So I'm Kaz.
I'm Jameson, and in the immortal words of Simon Pegg, and I really hope you guys play along with this one, how could this be for the greater good?
The greater good.
Stop saying that!
Well done.
All right.